Trick here is, okay, how do you know what group A and group B is? Your group A are the elements that are above on the periodic table, and the intertransitional metals, that's your group B, okay? Now there's an exception. There's that little square, the SN, the SB, the BI. Those are going to function like a group B, even though they're on the A side. Look at the very first element. That first element is going to tell you what to do. So NA, is it a group A or is it a group B? It's a group A. Very good. So now, is it a metal or is it a non-metal? Remember your staircase. Everything above the staircase is a non-metal, right? So what is Na? Oh, I almost said the answer. It's a metal, okay? So you're going to do nothing. You're just going to name it. So what's my name for sodium? I mean for Na. Oh, sodium. Doggone it. Okay, so what's... You have sodium, right? Okay. All right, so now look at your polyatomic ion sheet. If you have a compound, you're going to look at that cheat sheet I gave you that's on page 25 of your INB notebook. That's your polyatomic ion. What's my name for CO3 with a -2?
What was it?
Carbon what? Carbonate. Very good. Okay. Now the trick here, guys, remember if you have two capital letters, this is a compound. If you have an element, you're going to look for the name where? On the periodic table. Very good. If it's a compound, you're going to look for it in your polyatomic ion sheet. Okay? And that's it. Sodium carbonate, that's your name. Okay? Do we have a question so far? Okay, remember your objective is to make sure that you're looking in the proper place to get the correct name. Okay? All right, so now, look at the next one. Fe, is that a group A or is that a group B? It's a group B. Very good. So what do we do to group Bs?
Roman numeral.
They have a Roman numeral. What is Fe?
Tree.
What is Fe?
Iron.
Iron. Very good.
That's with the Roman numeral.
Okay. And we're going to figure out what the Roman numeral is, because remember you can have different choices. So you need to look at the other part of your compound, SO4. What is that? What's your name? Sulfate. Very good. My name is sulfate. So look at your polyatomic ion sheet. What used to be the charge for sulfate? A -2. Very good. Okay, now, but do you see that 2 down here? Is that there? Is it present? No, it's not, right? So what had to be over here for this to cancel out? A +2, right? Whatever that charge is, that's what your Roman numeral is. So my Roman numeral is what? It's a Roman numeral 2. So your full name is iron Roman numeral 2 sulfate. Okay, you see how we're giving you kind of like what we did before, the answer, but now you have to go backwards and figure out the name. You have to kind of uncrisscross to figure out which one you're going to use, right? To see which Roman numeral you're going to pick. Are we okay so far? Yes? Okay. So now let's go to the new stuff. Remember, covalent bonds are nonmetals. Covalent is the same thing as molecular bonds. Okay? You have 2 nonmetals. When you look at your very first element, it must be a nonmetal for you to use a prefix. You cannot mix prefixes with Roman numerals. You can't get off the phones. You can't mix prefixes with polyatomic ions. You can only use it with the nonmetals. Okay? And so I always get this question, ma'am. I get confused on when to use a prefix and when to not use a prefix, because the second element is a nonmetal. Well, yeah, if you have an ionic compound, the first element's a metal, the second one's going to be a nonmetal, right? But you don't use prefixes because the first one is not a non-metal. You only use it when the first element is a non-metal, okay? So what's your prefix for 2? Look at your chart. Yep, it's going to be di. And what's P? Phosphorus. So you're going to have di, phosphorus. Okay, all right. And what's my prefix for 5? Penta. And oxygen is what? Pentoxide, right. So when you have 2 vowels like that, drop the A. So instead of penta, it's just going to be pentoxide.
Why is it pentoxide?
Because your prefix for 5 is the penta.
Yeah, but I thought you said you can only use the prefix on the first one, but only if it's a non-metal.
You can only use prefixes when your first one is a non-metal. That's what I said. Okay. Okay, we all good? Huh? Okay. Don't get ahead because I'm still doing instruction. Okay? Please do not get ahead right now. Okay. I've also been getting this question all day. Why does this... Let's do something silly. Just let's make something up. Like... Here. You know what? Let's change that to 3. Okay. So now, is your first element a nonmetal?
Yeah.
Yes, because sulfur is a nonmetal, right? So how am I going to name this?
Dinitrate? No.
Disulfur.
Oh, the first one. So I was looking at the second.
And then trioxide. Okay, very good. Now, name the second one. Dinitrogen.
Trisulfur. Or said it before. No, you didn't. No?
And so it's what?
Trisulfur.
It's not trisulfur, it's trisulfide. Don't forget that the same rules apply. If you have a binary compound, the ending is always going to be IDE. Okay? Anytime you have a binary ending. So do we see why on this one, on this compound, it's sulfur because it's the first element? And on this compound, it's sulfide because it's the last element. Remember that the binary compounds always have that IDE ending. Whenever you have an element at the end, it always has the IDE ending. So oxygen will be oxide, nitrogen will be nitride. Okay, here, do I have nitride? No, because it's the first element. It's only nitride if it's on the second element. Think of it as a last name. Okay? All right, where do we need another example? Didn't we do number 1 already? We just did number 1. Okay. Oh, I thought he meant on the other side. That was the Na2CO3. That was the first one we did.
CO2?
The Na2CO3?
No,
The other side?
This one?
On the other side?
Okay, this one. Yeah,
Already, we did a couple of those. All right. So are we okay?
Yeah, sure, I guess.
Okay.
It's barely